A piercing alarm shattered the fragile calm of the command deck aboard the SS Victory. Red lights flickered ominously, casting a scarlet hue over Captain Mira Holt's determined face. Her heart raced as she swiftly scanned the chaotic scene unfolding on the holoscreen. Alien warships, sleek and menacing, had breached the outer defenses of Earth's atmosphere, their energy beams slashing through the dark void like the claws of some cosmic beast. "Status report!" Mira barked, her voice slicing through the tension in the air. The crew, a mix of seasoned veterans and green recruits, worked feverishly at their stations. Lieutenant Harris, her steadfast second-in-command, turned to her, his expression taut with anxiety. "3 enemy vessels have broken formation, Captain. They're targeting the power grid near New Chicago," he replied, fingers flying over the controls. "We're the last line of defense, and we're outnumbered." Mira felt the weight of her responsibilities crash down on her. This wasn't just a mission, it was humanity's last stand. The memories of the initial invasion flooded her mind, cities reduced to ashes, screams of terror echoing in her ears. Her childhood home in ruins, her family scattered. Anger simmered beneath her skin, fueling her resolve. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to buy time for the civilians to evacuate," she commanded, her voice steady despite the turmoil roiling inside her. The SS Victory trembled under the onslaught of enemy fire as Mira Holt gripped the console, her knuckles whitening. Alarms blared incessantly, a cacophony of impending doom. On the holoscreen, 3 massive warships loomed like predatory beasts, their weapons glowing ominously. The crew moved with purpose, a well-oiled machine under Myra's commanding presence, yet uncertainty hung in the air like a dense fog. "Captain, they're targeting our aft shields!" Lieutenant Harris shouted, urgency lacing his voice. "Divert power from the forward cannons!" Mira replied, her mind racing. "We can't afford to lose our shields. If they breach..." Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the ship, throwing her and Harris to the floor. The overhead lights flickered, and a blaring siren replaced the alarm with an ominous wail. Mira pushed herself up, adrenaline surging through her veins as she surveyed the chaos. "Damage report," she called, scrambling back to her feet. "Starboard shield down to 20%. Multiple hull breaches on decks 4 and 5. A voice piped up from the engineering station, where Chief Engineer Ria Tanaka was frantically tapping away at her console. "We can seal off the affected areas, but we'll lose auxiliary power." "Do it," Mira commanded, her mind already calculating their options. The ship's systems were faltering, but there was no room for doubt. "We can't let them take this ship. We have to fight back." Ria nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Redirecting power now, Captain. It'll take a few moments to stabilize." "Make it fast," Mira shot back, her gaze darting to the holoscreen. The enemy's ships had begun to regroup, their formations tightening as they prepared for a coordinated strike. Panic threatened to creep into her thoughts, but she shoved it down. They had faced worse. They had to find a way through this. "Enemy vessels are deploying fighters," Harris warned, his eyes wide. "They're coming in fast. Deploy our own fighters. Launch Squadron Alpha," Mira ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. The stakes were rising. They needed to strike first before the enemy could gain an advantage. As the order was relayed, Mira watched with a mix of pride and anxiety as the Victory's fighter jets launched into the fray, tiny specks of defiance against the looming warships. She could almost feel the weight of the ship pressing down on her. "Captain," Harris said, glancing at her, "what's the plan? We can't hold out much longer." She could see the fear in his eyes, the uncertainty that plagued her crew. They were all thinking it. The odds were stacked against them, and time was running out. But Mira had always been a strategist. She had to think bigger. "Listen up, everyone," she called out, raising her voice to gather their attention. "We may be outnumbered, but we have one advantage they don't: knowledge of our territory. If we can lure them towards the abandoned mining outpost on Luna's far side, we can use its defensive systems to turn the tide." Ria's brow raised slightly as she considered the implications. "That could work," but we'd have to time it perfectly. We might end up losing more than we gain. I know it's risky, but we're not here to play it safe, Mira said, a steely resolve in her voice. We're here to protect humanity. We can't let them take our home. Are you with me? The crew exchanged glances, the tension palpable. One by one, they nodded, determination replacing doubt. Then let's do it, Mira declared, her heart racing. Harris, prep for evasive maneuvers. Rhea, get our systems back online as fast as you can. We need every ounce of power at our disposal. The crews sprang into action, moving as if their lives depended on it, because they did. Mira felt a swell of hope as they rallied behind her. This was not just about survival. It was about fighting back against an overwhelming force that sought to extinguish humanity's flame. Just as she braced herself for the maneuver, a sudden explosion rocked the Victory, throwing everyone off balance. The ship groaned in protest, and Myra's stomach dropped as she realized they were too late to evade the enemy's next strike. "Brace for impact!" she shouted, her heart pounding as the screen flickered with the incoming barrage. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and there was no turning back now. The SS Victory shuddered violently as enemy fire rained down, a relentless storm of destruction that threatened to tear the ship apart. Mara Holt gripped the edge of the control panel, her heart pounding in sync with the alarms blaring around her. She could feel the ship's hull groaning, a visceral reminder of the peril they faced. The lights flickered, casting a dim glow over the faces of her crew, each marked by fear and determination. "Captain?" Harris's voice cut through the chaos. "We've lost power to the forward thrusters. We can't maintain our course." Myra's mind raced, weighing their dwindling options against the looming threat. "Redirect auxiliary power to stabilizers. We need to keep maneuvering. Rhea, can we restore the forward thrusters?" From the engineering station, Rhea Tanaka's hands flew over the console, her brows furrowed in concentration. "It'll take time. I'm doing what I can, but I need more than just auxiliary power. Make it happen!" Mara shot back, the urgency in her tone driving the crew's focus. They were a team forged through countless trials, and now was the time to prove it. The stakes had never been higher. "Fighter squadrons are engaging," Harris reported, his voice taut with anticipation. On the holoscreen, small ships danced in combat, bright laser beams crisscrossing against the backdrop of the void. Mira felt a pang of pride for her pilots, brave souls risking everything. "Good! Have them flank the enemy and draw fire away from us," she commanded, her resolve hardening. If they were to escape this hell, they had to outthink and outmaneuver their opponents. Rhea's voice rose above the din, laced with urgency. "Captain, I'm diverting power from the life support systems to get our shields back online. We'll have to endure a temperature drop, but it's our best shot." "No!" Mara shot back, an edge of desperation creeping into her tone. "We can't risk the crew's safety. Find another way. Captain, with all due respect, this ship isn't going to last much longer." Rhea's eyes flashed with determination. "I'll override the systems if I have to, but we need to act now." Mara paused, the weight of command pressing down on her. Rhea's loyalty was unwavering, but the thought of sacrificing comfort for survival twisted her gut. She looked around at her crew, their eyes wide with fear and trust. "We'll find another way," she decided, forcing confidence into her voice. "Trust in each other. That's how we'll survive." Before she could finish, another explosion rocked the ship, throwing Mira and her crew against the bulkhead. Alarms blared louder, echoing the chaos around them. She could hear the panic in Harris's voice as he shouted, "We've lost a compartment on Deck 4. The hull is breached. Seal it off," Mira commanded, scrambling to regain her footing. "Evacuate any personnel still inside." The crew moved swiftly, their training kicking in as they executed orders with precision. Mira focused on the screen, watching as the enemy ships drew closer, their weapons primed for a final assault. The tactical display showed the proximity of the enemy vessels, 3 ships closing in fast, their intentions clear. "Where are our fighters?" Mira barked, a tight knot of anxiety forming in her chest. Squadron Alpha is sustaining heavy losses, Harris replied, his voice strained. They're outnumbered and outgunned. Myra's heart sank, but she pushed through the despair. Rhea, how much longer until we can regain control? Just a few minutes. I'm rerouting power now, Rhea shouted, sweat glistening on her brow as she worked tirelessly at the console. Do you hear that? Harris suddenly interjected, eyes wide as he strained to listen. Myra paused, her senses sharpening. A rumble resonated through the ship, a sound not just from the battle outside but from something deeper, a low, menacing growl that seemed to shake the very core of the Victory. What is that? She muttered, her pulse quickening. It's coming from the enemy ships. Harris gasped, disbelief creeping into his voice. They're deploying something. Before anyone could react, the enemy vessels unleashed a barrage of heavy artillery. The Victory shuddered violently, alarms blaring as the shields flickered under the strain. Myra's breath caught in her throat. This was no ordinary attack. Brace for impact, she shouted, her heart pounding. Myra felt the ship lurch beneath her feet, the low rumble of battle intensifying as the SS Victory weathered another onslaught. Alarms blared around her, but the cacophony faded into the background as she focused on the tactical display, desperately searching for a way out. The crew had become a whirlwind of activity, each member driven by an instinctual will to survive. Captain? Harris shouted over the din, his voice strained with urgency. We need to reroute power to the aft shields. The front is nearly gone. Myra nodded sharply, the tension in her shoulders tightening as she leaned closer to the control panel. Rhea, how long until the thrusters are operational? Rhea's fingers flew across the controls, her brow furrowed in concentration. 2 minutes, if I can keep the systems from crashing. But we're running out of time. Understood, Myra replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. We'll hold them off until then. Harris, coordinate with our fighters. They need to distract those ships. Yes, Captain. Harris moved swiftly to relay her orders, his expression a mixture of determination and fear. The weight of command pressed heavily on Myra's chest, but she steeled herself, knowing every decision could mean life or death for her crew. Through the viewport, the darkness of space was illuminated by flashes of energy weapons, the distant forms of enemy ships looming ominously. Myra's heart raced as she caught sight of a massive cruiser moving to flank them, its guns primed and ready. Prepare to engage, she barked, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Rhea, what's our status? Shields at 30%. Rhea shouted back, her voice strained. I'm transferring energy from auxiliary systems. We'll need all we have. Just as Myra opened her mouth to reply, another explosion shook the ship, sending her crashing against the console. Pain lanced through her side, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the mission. Status report, she yelled, her voice hoarse. We've taken damage to Deck 3. The starboard engine is compromised. Harris shouted, panic creeping into his tone. Seal off the compartment and reroute power from the starboard systems. Myra commanded, her mind racing. They had to act quickly to stabilize the ship. We need to hold together just a little longer. Rhea's eyes widened, and she hesitated. Captain, if we take any more hits, we'll lose critical life support. We have to consider evacuating. Not yet, Myra snapped, her determination flaring. We fight. We find a way out of this. Just then, the ship shook violently again, a jolt that sent a chill of fear through the crew. The tactical display flickered, showing enemy ships converging like vultures ready to claim their prey. Myra felt a surge of desperation but forced herself to maintain composure. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Suddenly, the viewport exploded in a kaleidoscope of blinding light. Myra shielded her eyes as a shockwave radiated through the ship, rattling everything inside. Captain? Harris shouted, struggling to regain his footing. The enemy just deployed a weapon. They're targeting our power core. Rhea, can you? I'm on it, she interrupted, her fingers flying over the controls with a feverish intensity. Diverting all power to shields now. It's our only chance. Mira nodded, the tension knotting tighter in her stomach. Do it. We'll hold them off until we can make our escape. The crew moved in unison, adrenaline surging as they fought against the impending doom. Myra's heart raced as she listened to the commands flying across the bridge, each word fueling her resolve. She locked eyes with Rhea, who was pouring every ounce of energy into stabilizing the ship's systems. The engineer's focus was fierce, a blend of fear and determination that ignited Myra's own spirit. Come on, come on! Mira muttered under her breath, clenching her fists. They were so close to being operational again. Shields are at critical capacity, Rhea shouted. The next hit could breach us. Then let's give them hell. Mira roared, her voice cutting through the tension. Prepare the forward cannons. We're going to make them regret ever crossing us. The crew sprang into action, adrenaline fueling their movements as they prepared to fire back. Mira took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her crew's hopes resting on her shoulders. On my mark! She ordered, her heart racing as the tactical display illuminated their enemies' positions. 3, 2, 1. Fire! The ship erupted with the sound of energy weapons discharging, beams of light cutting through the darkness and striking the enemy's ships. For a moment, Mira felt a rush of triumph as one of the enemy vessels staggered back, its